Welcome back to SFA News Live. With me is David Ceasar, Green Skies Vertical Farms. Vertical farms is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think it's one of the most important issues that we can address where, we are seriously under major climate confusion and climate change. We are putting at risk agriculture and the concept of being able to create a vertical farm, for example, in New York City, where we don't have to grow lettuce in California, transport it around the country, have the kind of footprint, the carbon footprint that we now have is fascinating to me, exciting to me. So tell me what you're doing and where are we in this situation of vertical farms and who's embracing it and what are the battles that we've got to fight here?
So it's interesting that you talk about climate change because most people see vertical farms as a very energy intensive business, right? Because you have lights, you have cooling that needs to happen.
But we also have the sun that can solar power vertical farms.
But what most people don't know, which I think is really fascinating, if you take, let's say in California, we grow about 200,000 acres of lettuce. If you were to take all those 200,000 acres of lettuce, put them in vertical farms around the country to supply cities, and take those 200,000 acres and revegetate it, put it back to its natural ecosystem, we would actually have a positive carbon effect.
And the soil would probably be healthier and alive.
The soil would be healthier. You'd have a positive carbon effect. You'd have open space that people could use. You'd have lots of land where animals and natural vegetation could return. So it would be a great positive. It's also a great positive for workers. It's not a fun job to work outside in the cold and the heat. Harvesting lettuce, bending over.
And especially when it's 110 or 120 degrees
or
out.
freezing and raining outside. Yep. But in vertical farms, you have a consistent temperature. It's a very comfortable work environment. So it's a much better environment for workers, and it's guaranteed year-round work.
And also the yields are higher in many cases, right?
The yields are way higher because, when you're farming outside, the sun shines maybe 8-10 hours a day. It's cold outside sometimes. There's a lot of pest problems. So there's all these different factors that go into limiting the production. The vertical farms aren't perfect, that's for sure, but we're learning every day. And with vertical farms, you can produce pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the productivity is much higher. It depends on what crops we're talking about, but it can be anywhere from 50 to 100 times more productive, in the same space units.
So, the other thing about vertical farms, I've seen a lot about the concept of mixed-use buildings. So we can build vertical farms within office buildings. So perhaps 2/3 of the building is farming and 1/3 are offices.
Sure.
So we're seeing around the world a lot more innovation as it relates to that. So where are we in the U.S. as it relates to vertical farms? And in your opinion, where should we be?
Well, we're definitely not the leaders, that's for sure. Japan is one of the leading countries. Japan and Holland are some of the countries that are the leaders. And it has to do with space. Both of those countries are very space. They have limited space. They have limited natural resources to use. In the U.S., we've had a lot of space.
We've gotten spoiled.
We've gotten spoiled, exactly. So, as you probably know, in the last year or two, there's been a lot of investment in vertical farms. Plenty, which is located south of San Francisco, just got a $250 million investment. So they're the company that's got the most investment money. So vertical farms are developing, and I think they're going to be very big in the U.S. in the next 5 to 10 years. But as far as developing goes, we're definitely behind the curve, and I feel there should be a lot more investment in it.
So one of the contentions from the organic community, and we've certainly seen a huge increase in organic produce consumption and availability, is that if produce is not grown in the ground, in dirt, in that environment, it shouldn't be called organic. So, they're obviously fighting now with the hydroponic community who are saying, hey, we're probably more organic than you are, we just don't have soil. So how does the whole vertical farming play with this debate that's taking place now on organics?
Well, the debate is pretty much over for right now because the USDA, there's a group called the NOP, and they ruled in favor of allowing hydroponics to be certified organic.
But there's still not a lot of organic farmers that are happy with that, and they're still fighting.
No, there's a definite chasm between organic farmers who are soil-based and those who are indoor hydroponics. And I think a lot of it just has to do with mentality. A lot of the outdoor farmers are scared that they see hydroponics as a much more productive system, and they're afraid that it's going to take their ruin their markets.
And not only is it a more efficient system, but also what most people don't realize is there are pesticides that are used in organic. I think it's over 100 pesticides that have been approved that in the whole indoor farming environment, those go away. You don't need those.
Well,
or am I wrong on that?
Well, because it's an organic farm, because it's an indoor farm, if the HVAC and is set up correctly, you can manage it to virtually keep pests out. So, but if you have a farm that's not managed well, pests will occur.
As with anything,
and,
right?
Yeah, and you'll need to use some sort of pesticides or something to get rid of the pests. But indoor farms, vertical farms allow for that possibility. Outdoors, it's impossible to manage to completely eliminate pests. It's a natural system. We're trying to, with outdoor farming, you're trying to create an agricultural system within a natural system. So you're constantly fighting with the natural processes that are going on, and that
are changing very rapidly.
Exactly.
And we have, major issues to deal with there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know I hate to pinpoint you down to this, but when do you think, as far as a year goes, that we will see vertical farming become maybe not mainstream, but significant?
Well, it's going to vary by crop, right? Because right now we have the ability to grow things like lettuce, salad greens, herbs, smaller crops in vertical farms. And I think, probably within 5 or 10 years, these types of vertical farms will be mainstream for producing those crops. As far as other crops, it's going to take a while. There's some crops we'll never be able to produce in vertical farms, of course, but kind of the next generation of crops are things like high-value crops like strawberries, raspberries, things like that. So I would say, 5, 7, 8 years for lettuce and leafy greens will be pretty commonplace, and then maybe closer to 15 years for things like strawberries.
And berries just make so much sense because of the climate change that's taking place in California. We've seen a lot of those farms move to Mexico, move to Peru, and so on. So if we want to keep it as a U.S. produced product, we're going to have to go this direction.
For sure. We need to, climate change is happening, whether our politicians want to say it is or not. And, the outdoor environment is changing, and so areas that were once great for crop production are going to be no longer great in a few years, and vice versa. New areas are going to open up, and we need to take, we need to have an array of weapons or an array of options to be able to produce all the food we need. And
well, David, thank you so much.
Thank
you for keeping us up to date on it. Keep on pushing it, and we'll all help you get that word out there.
Okay,
so
great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Going to take a break, back with more on SFA News Live.